Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to a PhotoJoseph live show. This is the first real live show that I've done in a really long time. I did one last week that was kind of a big test bed to make sure that everything was working and explain some of this new configuration. So if you didn't see that and you're interested in what went into this, what's actually happening kind of behind the scenes, do check that out. Now, for anybody who's watching not live, I will timestamp below, chapter marker, whatever, where the start of the actual live show is, the actual meat of this show that you came here to watch. But while we're waiting for that to begin, let's just get a little quick shout out in the chat room. Let's make sure that people can see and hear and, you know, all that good stuff. So let's just bring up the chat and let's see what we've got going on. We have a few people already here this morning. So I get the right chat thing. There we go. We got good morning from Amory. Is that, I guess that's Amori? Not quite sure how that's pronounced, but thank you. Good morning to you too. Kitsal. Good to see you here, my friend. I see Kitsal saying that you just bought the YoloBox Pro, so obviously that's going to be the best one. And, you know, I think it's fair to say that while the title of the video is which one is better, clearly what this really means is which one is better for you, because there are going to be cases where one is clearly the better choice for you, but this is not going to be quite as easy as, well, that's obviously the better one. So, you know, take that for what it's worth there. Namaste in India. Awesome. Go Web. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. David in the Caymans. Wow, that's pretty awesome. So, hey, if you haven't noticed this, if you're watching this on your phone, then you're going to watch it in HD, I'm sure. But if you're watching this on a bigger screen, a tablet or a computer, this is being streamed live in 4K. So you should be able to load this up in full 4K, go big screen on your monitor, go full 4K and enjoy it for all it's worth. Because, you know, I can, and so that's what I'm doing in here. David says it's coming through great. Well, that is awesome. Good to hear. Sound should be good, shouldn't be clipping. I know the levels are all looking nice on this end, so hopefully everything is good for everybody out there as well. So listen, as far as the format of this goes, I'm going to really dive into what will probably take a while to go through all of this because there is a ton of information. Oh, and I just realized I forgot to publish the web page that you need. So hold on, let me hit the publish button on that. I knew I forgot to do something before this all started. And hit save and close. And so if you've already loaded up the URL that that had a little not quite yet waiting logo thing on it, then refresh that page. Otherwise, the URL that you want to load up is right there, photojoseph.com/ATEM versus YoloBox. And I'm going to make sure on my end that it did actually load. /ATEM versus YoloBox, YoloBox, I can spell. And that is, yes, that loaded. So that is the chart that I'm going to be going through. So you can bring that up to kind of follow along if you want to. Obviously, you don't have to. It's just a way to easily see line by line what I'm doing. Obviously, you can read ahead if you want to, but, you know, don't do that. That takes some of the fun away. But this is also there for you to go back to at any time. So that URL will stay up online, and you can enjoy the details of what I'm talking about on here just on your own screen like so. All right, anything else we want to say hi to? We got Rudy in Belgium. Awesome. And David saying, watching on your 77-inch LG. Wow, so that's bigger. The biggest one I have is 55, and that's at home. 77. Well, hopefully the 4K is holding up nicely for that 77 inches. Kitsal says, ooh, 4K. See if I have food stuck in my teeth. I'm pretty sure I brushed my teeth this morning. Yes, I think we're good. All right. Shall we? Shall we get this thing going? This is going to be fun. Oh, and incidentally, when you see the interface of the ATEM Mini or the YoloBox itself, so actually let me just do a quick little test on that, make sure that's all working. So there you go. There's the ATEM Mini UI, and there's the YoloBox UI. Those, when you're looking at them there, you're actually seeing the HD signal upscaled. So they won't look quite as clean because that's what's happening. But anyway, just thought you might like to know. All right, shall we get this thing started? Let's get this thing started. Let's get into the extreme detailed differences between the ATEM Mini lineup and the YoloBox lineup. Now, there's two YoloBoxes. There's the YoloBox and the YoloBox Pro. On the ATEM side, there's a lot, right? You start with the ATEM Mini, ATEM Mini Pro, ATEM Mini Pro ISO, ATEM Mini Extreme, and then ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. That's the lineup. We're not going to go comparing every single model, but you'll see here in just a moment what we are comparing, and I think it's going to be a very fair comparison, price and everything else wise. So let's go ahead and just dive into this. I'm going to switch over to my Mac view here. Let's get that up. There we go. And you're basically, again, looking at the same spreadsheet on that webpage if you've pulled it up. If you look down here, you'll see a bunch of categories that I'm going to be going through. Hardware, setup, outputs, power, inputs, media, and effects. Audio, recording, streaming, device control, and external hardware. So those are all the categories we're going to be going through. Yes, it's going to be a lot, so let's just get into it, shall we? So starting off with hardware. First, let's talk about, actually, before I open that, let's look at this top line here, and you can see what I'm comparing. So you've got the YoloBox, YoloBox Pro, ATEM Mini Pro ISO, and ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. And these two ATEMs are the two tops of their end, and then of course the two YoloBoxes. And the price comparison is very equivalent, so that's why we're comparing these and not cheaper ATEMs. So the YoloBox is $750, the ATEM Mini Pro ISO is $795, US dollars of course. The YoloBox Pro is $1,200, and the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO is also $1,200. So we have very similar pricing there, so I think it's a very fair comparison. We are talking about the top end of the two categories of ATEMs and then the two YoloBoxes. And I think if you're going to buy a YoloBox today, it doesn't, well, I mean, there's a pretty big price difference. I suppose you might buy the original one and not the Pro, but in here you will see some of the differences between those as well. So if you're watching this just to figure out the differences between the YoloBox and the YoloBox Pro, then you're going to learn that too through here. All right, so let's start off with hardware. And at the first glance, the YoloBox is going to come out on top for a lot of things. So hardware, built-in screen. Which ones have a built-in screen? So the YoloBoxes both have built-in screens. The base model is a 7-inch screen with a 350 nit brightness, so that's how bright it is, how easily you'll be able to see that outdoors. And let me get that right. Darn it, I knew I was going to break that at some point. Let's go back to here, and at some point, this is going to move over. You know, it doesn't matter how much you test something, it just doesn't always work the way you intended to. Give me just a second here. I'm going to fix that because that is just annoying. That should be over in the corner, and I don't know why that's not working. So let's just run that little macro that should have already been running, and let's see now. It's still not in the right place. You know, all the best intentions. Oh, well. Let's just get this back up, and I guess I will just hide this, and maybe at some point it'll magically go where it's supposed to go. Yeah, that's totally messing that up. Wow. I really screwed something up here. Huh. Bring that back, go back to here. Nope. I swear to God, I tested this about 100 times beforehand, and I had to make some tweaks, and something broke. I don't know what it is. Oh, well, I guess you're just not going to get me on the screen when the Mac is on the screen. No worries. Okay, so screens, again, sorry, 7-inch and 8-inch, 350 and 450 nits. The ATEM Minis do not have displays on them, so that's pretty straightforward right there. If we look at these from the top here, you'll see here's your ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. This is the box, and then this is the YoloBox. And so the YoloBox, of course, has a nice big display built into it there. The brightness, incidentally, of those two, the difference is 100 nits, right? Yeah, 150 nits. That's not a huge difference, but that brightness allows you to see it outdoors, which is important because if you're treating this like a portable streaming device, you're outside, out in the field with it, you got to be able to see it even if there's sunlight. So, so that brightness is enough to see it in bright sunlight. Not like the craziest brightest sunlight. You might want to put a shade on it if you're in full direct sun. Probably a good idea anyway, but outdoor normal brightness, it should be visible just fine. Headphone port, surprisingly kind of an important thing to be able to monitor your show, and the YoloBoxes both have them. The ATEM Mini Pro ISO does not. In fact, you don't get into the headphone jack on the ATEMs until you get up to the Extreme models. And the reason for that, well, I shouldn't say reason, the workaround for that, if you have an ATEM without a headphone jack, and the expectation is that you are going to be plugging in a monitor so that you can see your multi-view, right? So that you can see this multi-view. You need to be able to see what's going on. Once you plug in a monitor to this multi-view, you can plug headphones into that monitor, and then you can hear the show. Even if you're looking at this multi-view view, you're still going to be seeing or hearing the program, what the audience would hear. That is great, but if you are using a monitor that doesn't have a headphone jack, or you're just not using a monitor, then you kind of are audio blind. So I guess you'd just call that deaf on it. So we can't do, you can't monitor audio on a smaller ATEM without an external device, external screen. Whereas on the ATEM Mini Extreme, you actually do have a headphone port. If we, let's see, I don't know where exactly it is on here. Let's see, somewhere over here, it's probably out of view. Anyway, somewhere around here, I don't even know where they are. There is the headphone port that is on these two devices. The YoloBox, on the other hand, has headphone ports built into it. All right, built-in SD card slot for recording. So the YoloBoxes both have the built-in SD card slot. The ATEMs do not. However, the ATEM is designed to be connected to a USB drive to record. So if you have a little SSD drive, or any USB drive really, you can plug it into your ATEM and record the show that way. So there's your workaround. That's the way it's designed, but you do have that functionality built into the YoloBox with that SD card slot built in. The built-in SIM slot so that you can stream without having to have a local internet connection. The YoloBoxes both have a built-in SIM slot. The ATEMs do not, but the caveat there is that the ATEM can be connected to your smartphone. So you can have your phone tethered to your ATEM, and I actually did a show on this not that long ago explaining how to set this up, where you can take your iPhone or your Android phone with a tethering plan. Now that is an important part. You do have to have a tethering plan, plug that into your ATEM, and then use that cellular signal as a backup, or as your primary if needed. So that is an option as well. Use cell phone for streaming. So yes, on all of these. And I separated this because it's not just about using the SIM slot. You can actually use a cell phone, a separate phone for streaming on both devices. So on the ATEM, you plug it in. On the YoloBox, I believe you have to make a Bluetooth connection to it. But again, it can use your cell phone's tethering plan. Again, you have to have the tethering plan to be able to do that, instead of having to go out and buy a separate SIM just for the YoloBox. Obviously, if you're doing this all the time, you should do that. Plug a SIM into the YoloBox, and you have an all-in-one solution in there. Built-in Wi-Fi. This is a biggie that people come up a lot. People ask about a lot. The YoloBox has built-in Wi-Fi. The ATEM does not. Now, I've put in a caveat here. However, Wi-Fi should not be used for streaming. Basically, you really don't want to use Wi-Fi if you can avoid it. I very much appreciate that the YoloBox has it built in so that you can use it if that is the only option. If all you have is Wi-Fi, you can't get onto a hard line, then at least you can still use the YoloBox. With the ATEM, you're out of luck. I mean, you can use your laptop and do some kind of weird tethering thing, but it's not really designed to do it that way. So yeah, having the Wi-Fi capability, even though I will say wholeheartedly, please don't use Wi-Fi to run your live stream. If it's the only choice you got, it's the only choice you got. So the YoloBox has got you covered there. And let's see here, 1/4-20 hole on the device for tripod or mounting it onto a camera. The YoloBox has them. The ATEM does not. I mean, this is a pretty kind of straightforward. This is obviously designed to be used on your desk, whereas the YoloBox can be it is meant to be taken on the road or taken anywhere you like, or used on your desk. And incidentally, this little stand right here, so do I have another shot of this? If I go to the front view, yeah, you can see this here. This little stand is from Aaron Parecki. I've put a link to these down below in the description. So he makes these stands for all the YoloBoxes and for the ATEM boxes as well. And you have this kind of cool desktop rigging setup. So that's what's on there. But if you are taking this out in the field, you don't need the stand, then back to the overhead view, what you do need is that 1/4-20 tripod hole, which you do have on there. So super cool thing to have if you're gonna take this out on the road. The ATEM, obviously not designed to be mounted on your camera, but it's a feature. It's something you need to know about. And what this really comes down to is this: standalone, all-in-one. The YoloBox is a standalone device. It is designed to be used on its own in its entirety. You don't need anything else, well, other than cameras, obviously. Let's not be silly. You still need a camera. But it is designed to be all-in-one. Whereas the ATEM Mini is really not. And here I've written that technically the ATEM can be pre-configured so that you could just plug it into your network and go live. But that's really risky. Not having a computer along with it and potentially at least a external monitor to see what's going on, you're really going blind. So while technically, yes, you could take an ATEM that's completely pre-configured, make sure you save the startup state, unplug it, go on location, plug it into your network, plug your cameras in, press the go live button and go live without having a monitor attached, without having a computer nearby. Yes, that is technically possible, but very risky because you're very blind to what's happening. You don't know what the audience is really seeing. You don't know if it's even streaming to the right place. So not something that you would really want to do. So I'm saying that the ATEM is definitely not meant to be a standalone device. Okay, so there's that first category of hardware. Let's close that out. I'm going to take a quick little look over at the chat, see if there's anything that's come up that we want to address. Some people saying hello, some people watching through their ATEM, and let's see here. Now we learned how to live with the ATEM. Sorry, go to web. I'm not quite sure what you mean here. Let's pull that back up. Not quite sure what exactly you're saying on there, but cool. And love learning about the Speedify hack for YoloBox. Okay, not my thing, so you guys are good on that. All right, let's get back in. So setup, what it takes to set up the hardware. Mac OS and Windows apps. There are no apps for the YoloBox. There are apps, of course, for the ATEM. And this is one of those you can say, well, you don't need the app on the YoloBox, so that doesn't matter, right? Everything is built into it. and that is very true, but there are certainly times when it can be advantageous to have control of your box from a separate device. And so the ATEM software is designed for that. That's how the ATEM is designed to be controlled. And actually, if you kind of go back historically on the ATEMs before the minis came out, they were designed to be rack mounted, and still are, the bigger ones, designed to be rack mounted. They have some limited interface on the front of them, but you certainly are not meant to sit there in front of the rack and push buttons to change camera angles. That's not how they're designed. They're designed to be controlled via software. So it's like from the core up. Now, the ATEM minis have a lot of buttons on them. You can definitely use that as hardware only, but the software is a huge, huge part of that, and pretty important / critical part of that. So again, there is no computer interface on the Mac. There's no web browser interface or anything like that, but there is an app on the ATEM. No software needed. So let's flip it around the other way. Yeah, you don't need software. Oops, you don't need software on the ATEM. Sorry, on the YoloBox. You don't have to have software, so that's why there is none. On the ATEM, you really do. You really do need that software in there. Firmware updates. All devices support firmware updates, and I've noted here that the YoloBox is technically an Android computer. So theoretically, you can add more features to the YoloBox than you could to the ATEM. The ATEM is very limited in the hardware that it has. Some new features get added via software, but it's mostly bug fixes. Maybe some little things can get added, more streaming destinations, stuff like that. Whereas the YoloBox, they can add anything in there that the hardware is capable of doing. So as long as the hardware can handle it, they can write the software for it. So in that regard, the YoloBox is probably a bit more future-proof on what it would be able to handle. I wouldn't expect it to, let's say, be able to suddenly do 4K because the hardware HDMI ports on there are very unlikely to be 4K capable. However, maybe they are, I don't know. However, things like completely redesigning the audio interface could totally be done on the YoloBox, which is actually something that is being worked on right now. The company has said a few times. So, you got more flexibility with upgradability on the YoloBox. Direct mouse and keyboard support. So yes, on the YoloBox, not really applicable on the ATEM. And what this means is that when you're looking at your YoloBox, here, let's just switch over to it real quick. This is a touch-based interface. I go in here and I start setting things up, and I can go in, I don't know, add a title slide or whatever. All the different things you can do in here, I can do with so here, if I wanted to add a lower thirds, I could go in here and start typing in the text for that, right? That is all possible on the ATEM itself. Or you can take a USB keyboard and a USB mouse and plug them into the ATEM and then control it that way. Into the YoloBox and control it that way. So that's pretty cool, right? That's a neat little feature to have. That doesn't apply to the ATEM. That's why I said not applicable, NA, because if you're controlling it through software, then you're on a computer, so obviously you have your mouse and your keyboard. There is no methodology of doing anything on the ATEM itself with a mouse or a keyboard, so it doesn't really apply. But just wanted to make sure that you knew that that is a feature on the YoloBox. And then finally, save and restore settings. So this, I put no in here, but I just saw an update last night, so I'm going to actually change this to yes and yes. So it's a little bit different than save and restore. It's more about reusing previous events, but they've just added, and it's a somewhat limited add in the release notes that I saw. I guess there's more features coming. It used to be that in the YoloBox, when you created a show and then did that live show, you could not reuse that live show. You had to rebuild everything from scratch. Whereas now, in this recent update, you can reuse a live show. So basically duplicate the previous show and do it again. So you do have kind of a save and restore settings now, whereas when I initially wrote this, you didn't. But like I said, it just came up. So that's kind of cool. All right. That's everything in setup. So let's move on to outputs. All right, HDMI/program out. The YoloBoxes both have them, and the ATEM Minis have them. The ATEM Mini Pro, or ATEM Mini Extreme, has 2 outputs. But there's a huge difference in what these outputs are for. So let's go scroll down the rest of this lineup here. Multi-view out. So you have multi-view on the ATEMs, and that is this. That's the multi-view off of the ATEM, so you can see all of your inputs simultaneously. On the YoloBox, do you have that? Well, sort of. So it's essentially mirroring the display, and that's what you're seeing here. This is a mirror of the display. It is the same thing that you're seeing on the box here that is mirrored out. You can have the HDMI out show just the program, so just your program out can go out over HDMI, or it can mirror the screen. But if you aren't seeing it on the display here, then you can't see it on an external monitor, meaning that you can't monitor different camera angles that are not currently visible on the screen here. So if you're in the middle of building a title or something, you're going to have limited access to what you can actually see on there. Just a very different approach, right? The multi-view approach, this is kind of a core broadcast thing where you see all of your inputs. They only have one camera plugged into here, but you see other info on the bottom. And then on the ATEM, on the YoloBox, it is, again, just a mirroring of that. So very different approaches, but there you go. All right. And then USB as a webcam. So this actually, I guess I should have updated this before. I wrote these slides initially a long time ago. These are both just added. So you do have the ability to use your YoloBox as a webcam on the, use your YoloBox as a webcam, and the ATEM has always had that since day one. The difference, though, I did see in the release notes for this feature that, again, was recently added, you don't have all the full titling capabilities on the YoloBox going out over USB for a webcam, so it's kind of limited in what you can do with it, but they have promised more features are coming. And when YoloBox promises these things, or YoloLive is the company, when they promise these things, you can rely on that. They are actively actually working on it. So, it's coming. So you're getting more. And they did say that webcam was coming. It's now here. It's just at a very basic form. Eventually, you'll have essentially the full, everything you would normally do on a program out, you'll be able to do over USB as a webcam. So that's kind of cool. All right, and outputs, that is everything for outputs. Let's talk about power. Power, built-in battery. The YoloBox has built-in battery, the ATEM does not. Once again, comes down to that core difference in how they're meant to be used. The YoloBox is designed as a standalone all-in-one device, so clearly it must have a battery. The ATEM is not. Now, yes, you could rig up a battery to power the ATEM, but it's not going to be simple. The power port on the ATEM is not a USB port. It's a DC tap, so you would have to, get like a V-mount battery or something and get the right DC port and tap it up that way. It can be done, certainly, but it's not designed that way. So the YoloBox is designed. I mean, it's got the built-in battery, so there you go. AC power included. So technically no on the YoloBox. It comes with a USB cable, but then you do have to supply your own power brick. That's why I put no in there. Of course, yes, on the ATEMs. They come with their own power supply, of course, because it's the only way to run it. The USB power on the ATEM, the USB cable is used to charge it, and it can power it as well. So like I have it plugged in right now so that the battery doesn't die on it. And the battery lasts a long time. I shouldn't say it like it's going to die on me, but this is plugged in, so it's keeping a charge all the time. And there we go. Okay, let's see, and actually the last one, power with USB. So you can power the YoloBox with USB, the ATEM Mini cannot be powered with USB. So there's your power stuff. All right, so how are we doing so far? We getting there, we're getting some interesting things. I'm gonna take a quick look at the comments here and see what's going on. Someone's talking about bad sound, but others saying it's fine. And let's see here. Quotas talking about nothing. I think I need to, okay, well here, GoToWeb is asking this. Let me pull this chat up. Asking, what am I using for the live today, the YoloBox or the ATEM? Well, this is a live stream in 4K, so not possible through the YoloBox. I'm not using an ATEM Mini for this. I'm using my big ATEM, my ATEM 2ME, and the actual encoding to live stream is happening through an Epiphan Pearl. So this is, what I'm using to go live is my basic broadcast massive studio in here that's allowing me to tie all of this together. So I'm not using either of these products for the live show other than to show you what the product looks like. Again, watch last week's video on how I did this, how I'm doing this, if you're interested in the behind the scenes of how all of this is actually happening. Okay, and Aaron's in the house. Aaron, good to see you, my friend. You are possibly on an airplane right now watching this. So if that's the case, then that is awesome. And I guess, let's see, people are talking about the UVC. If it's not UVC, David says, it won't work with FaceTime and many apps on the Mac OS, but the YoloBox is UVC, it seems. So, okay, that's great. Universal Video Codec, is that right? That's the format that allows it to be viewed over USB and then picked up by multiple apps. So what this means as a use case is if you have something like, so I've got these old Blackmagic, this is the wrong one, but Ultra Studio Mini Recorder. Yeah, this one's called a mini recorder. What this does is allows you to connect SDI or an HDMI into your computer over Thunderbolt, right? Super, super awesome and handy. And these are the little HD ones. No, they're not 4K capable. But they are not UVC, which means that a lot of software like FaceTime, Zoom, and so on doesn't recognize that. So that's what the UVC allows. And David is saying that the YoloBox is UVC. So that's awesome. Good. Thank you for bringing that up, David. I think that's awesome. And Aaron says that he is, in fact, on a plane. That's awesome. Wherever you're flying, whichever flight you're on, I hope it's a good flight. I hope you get upgraded to business class, because that's always the way. And thank you for tuning in. Okay, let's get back into this. And we'll get rid of that. All right, so inputs. Now we're getting into the big meat of it. The original YoloBox has 2 HDMI inputs. The YoloBox Pro has 3 HDMI inputs. The ATEM Mini Pro ISO has 4, and the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO has 8. So here we're seeing a massive difference and advantage for the ATEM Mini Pro ISO, ATEM Mini Extreme ISO, I gotta get the right name in there. 8 inputs, you can see them all here, 8 HDMI inputs, whereas there's only 3 on here. So that is significant. If you are running a show where you need more than those inputs that are on the YoloBox, YoloBox is not going to work for you. You could tether ATEM Mini into the YoloBox and add inputs that way, but then live switching it does get certainly confusing. Possible, technically possible, but we're talking what's built in, and the YoloBox has just the 3 versus the 8 on the ATEM Mini Extreme, and that's what you need to compare, right? You need to compare the YoloBox Pro to the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. So you're talking on the higher end, the $1,200 price point, you're talking 3 inputs on the YoloBox Pro, 8 inputs on the ATEM Mini Extreme. Built-in scalers. All of them have built-in scalers, which is great. This means that you can plug in a variety of resolutions and or frame rates into either of these boxes, and they will be scaled to whatever you're broadcasting. So if it's 1080p 2997 or 24 or 25 or whatever you're doing, they will scale out to that. Now I've noted on here, and this goes for both of them, they will take in 1080 or 720, but not Ultra HD. You can't send a 4K signal into either of these, and that applies to both of them. So just so you're aware, you cannot take a 4K source into these. Both of them will go, ooh, don't know what to do with that. They have to be HD, but they can be either 1080p or 720p, and they will scale appropriately. Pretty cool. USB camera inputs, for i.e. a webcam, using a webcam into the device. So the YoloBoxes both have this. The ATEMs do not. Excuse me, and this is kind of a big deal for a lot of folks. I get this question all the time. People asking how they can hook up a webcam to their ATEM box. And you can't. Somebody in China created a box that converts USB to HDMI, but the cost of that box and hardware, you may as well just go out and buy a cheap HDMI camera. It just doesn't make sense. The quality of a webcam is so poor. Now, some of the I know Logitech's got a higher end webcam now that actually has HDMI out. Cool, that'll work because it's HDMI. But a USB webcam, not going to work on the ATEM. However, on the YoloBox, you can. So a lot of people really, really like that. The fact that you can take any webcam, plug it in, and off you go. That's pretty cool. So advantage there for the YoloBox for sure. I think it'd be nice to see that on the ATEM. I don't think we're ever going to. I think it would require a whole different type of hardware converter protocol inside the box that just isn't there. But anyway, there you go. So good to know. And dedicated audio inputs. So the YoloBox has, the original YoloBox has 1 input. YoloBox Pro has 1 mic level and 1 line level input, and both the ATEM Minis, all the ATEM Minis have 2 inputs, and those can be either line or mic level. You change that in software. And then it's also noted here that all video and USB inputs also have audio. So if you're, looking at the ATEM Mini, you've got 2 audio inputs, but then you have 8 HDMI inputs. Each one of those 8 HDMI inputs can have audio on them, so technically you'd have 10 audio inputs. The YoloBox, all 3 of its HDMI plus the USB are audio inputs as well. And so you can pull in audio from there. Now, we'll talk about it a little bit more in a bit here, but it is really important. I'm going to say this now, even though I'm going to say it again later, but I want to say it now that we're talking about audio. On the ATEM, currently, on the ATEM, you can use any or all audio sources that you want. So if you want to pull in audio from mic 1, HDMI 3, and HDMI 8, because that's where your mics are, you can do that. You can independently adjust levels between them, turn them on and off, whatever you want. Perfect. On the YoloBox, however, you can't. You can only have 1 audio enabled at a time. So you have to have your audio from all sources, whatever that is, whether it's an interview you're running or whatever, all coming in a single audio input. Now, YoloLive has promised that they're working on a much more refined audio interface. However, that is not here today, so that is an important thing to understand. Okay. All right, that's inputs. Now let's look at media and effects. This is a big category. We've got a lot here to cover. All right, play videos without any additional devices, meaning no external hardware. The YoloBox can do this, the ATEMs cannot. huge difference here. So if you've got a bumper, an ad roll, mid-roll, any little video that you want to play to your audience, with the YoloBox, you can actually load that video onto the YoloBox and play it directly in there. Whereas the ATEM, there is no way to do that. You have to have some kind of external device. That could be something like a hyperdeck that will play. You can take any HDMI device. You could have an Apple TV that you plug in and play video through there. You could take a computer and plug it in and play video on the computer mirrored through there. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but you have to do it externally. There is no built-in device for the ATEM, no built-in way for it to play video, whereas the YoloBox has that. So that's a really important differentiator in there and a really nice nod to the YoloBox for having that. Same thing with PDFs. So the YoloBox has a built-in PDF reader, so you could load up, let's say, your slide deck. Let's say you're doing a simple slide presentation and you don't need animations, you just need static text on a page or graphics or whatever. You could load up, make your slides as a PDF document, load that PDF onto the YoloBox, and then you could do a little picture-in-picture with you talking about your slides as your slides roll by. Pretty slick. Again, possible to do that entirely all in one device. Whereas with the ATEM, if you want to play a PDF through there, you're going to have to plug a computer in and basically mirror the computer screen and play the PDF or load the PDF that way. So big difference there. Load graphics without a computer. So yes, on the YoloBox, no, you need a computer for the ATEM, and what this means is that the YoloBox has an SD card slot, so you can have graphics on an SD card that you pop in and then load them up, whereas on the ATEM, you have to use a computer to move graphics over to it. But saying that you don't need a computer is a little bit of a misnomer, because how did those files get onto the SD card in the first place? For that, you needed a computer. So you have to have a computer to get the graphics onto the SD card. But what it does mean is that you could have an SD card with tons of graphics on it that you might need for any possible situation, and then load up the ones that you need for any given show in the field. You wouldn't have to plug in a computer to do that. So that's kind of the difference in there. So to say you don't need a computer at all isn't really true, but you do not need a computer just to load the graphics on there onto the YOLO, assuming that you already have them on an SD card. Built-in title generator. There is a built-in title generator on the YoloBox, and there is not on the ATEM, which is a really nice thing. Again, it goes back to that whole all-in-one idea. I don't have to have external hardware, computers, etc., to run a show off the YoloBox. I can literally make my graphics, my lower thirds titles, in the YoloBox itself. And it's a pretty good interface for that. Here, let's just see. Well, here, we're looking at it right now, right? I already pulled this template up. So I can reselect a different template in here. There's a variety of templates to choose from. And obviously, you can edit the text and do whatever you're going to do on there. So it's pretty slick, right? That is a pretty slick thing to be able to do. Oh, excellent. So Feng is in the chat. Let me pull this up right here. He is a representative from YOLO Live. He's in China, so I think it's in the middle of the night there. So thanks for tuning in, buddy. And he's here if you have any questions about the YoloBox that I either miss or can't get to. You can @ him on there, and he will answer those for you. So that is awesome. Thank you very much for coming into here. Since we're here in the chat, let's see what else is going on. Let me scroll up and see if I've missed anything. Westlager talking about the product's philosophy is very different. Yeah, they are. They're very different, so that's why we're doing this comparison, so you know exactly what it is. Aaron is on a plane watching a 4K stream in 360p. Ouch. Harsh. Brutal. YOLO could add local SD card video and PDF, though. It already has local SD card video and PDF. So, yeah, that's already in the YoloBox. It's not in the ATEM. If I missaid that at any point, that's the way it is. Amr saying, just add a Raspberry Pi. Sure, to play your video you can, but that again is external hardware. We're talking about what you can do internally. You cannot, so there we go. You cannot play videos internally on the ATEM without external hardware. Okay, moving on. So built-in title generator, there we go. Built-in scoreboard feature. So the YoloBox has this cool scoreboard feature built into it. You don't have anything like that on the ATEM. Again, external hardware required. So, you know, if you're live streaming like your kid's soccer game, you can totally do a score-keeping thing on the YoloBox. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? That's a neat little feature. I like it. Nice. A built-in countdown clock, yes, on the YoloBox, no on the ATEM. So when you were watching, if you were tuned into this live show before it actually started, you saw a countdown clock. That didn't come from the ATEM. That is totally external hardware and software required to do that. Those little touches, things like the title cards, the lower third, the scoreboards that are built into the YoloBox are really nice. Again, goes back to that whole all-in-one idea. But because, as I said in the beginning, it is an Android computer, it can do anything in software that the engineers want to make it do. It could do any other number of things on there. You know, the scoreboard, the countdown clock, those are just features that somebody there wrote code for. So if you've got some crazy thing that you think would be amazing that other people would love to have on there, by all means, reach out to YoloLive. You got Frank here in the chat. Tell him in the chat that you want to see this feature, and you know they'll add it to the list. No promises it'll happen, but you got to ask. If you don't get what you don't ask for. Whereas on the ATEM, that stuff simply can't be done. It's never going to be added. Can't be done. So, okay. Let's see here. Built-in scrolling caption. You've got that on the YoloBox as well. Color generators, color bar. Oh no, just solid color generators. Interesting thing that YOLO doesn't have, and Frank, you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't recall ever seeing this. Just to make a solid color. So you could do a solid color as part of a title, but if you just need a solid blank color, you don't have it. Now, this is probably not something you need for anything. The only places you would need it, you do have something like that in the YoloBox, but on the ATEM, there is an actual color generator page where you can generate solid colors to use in a variety of things. So it's just, you know, it's a feature that is on there. I wanted to make sure that was listed. Fade to black. You don't have a fade to black button on the YoloBox, whereas you do on the ATEM. Honestly, I don't know how widely that is necessary, but it's there, right? There's a dedicated it's a big button, actually. It's a little bit too big, if you ask me. But here it is, the FTB button. You hit that, and the whole thing fades to black. So, you know, it's good to know. And you've got that if you need it. Never use it, but it's there. And I think it's a pretty common thing in broadcast, which is why it's in the ATEMs. It's not in the YoloBox, but maybe not that big of a deal. Color bar generator. So the YoloBox does not have that, whereas the ATEMs do. And that's just the ability to output color bars. So let's see if I go, can I do it from here? So many buttons on this thing. I don't even have it. I don't even know. Maybe it is, but whatever. In the software, you can turn that on, and then you can generate color bars, which can be very useful for doing color accuracy tests on monitors and so on. But you know, for the most people, for the most part, not really necessary, but it's there. Again, listing all the functions here. This is a neat one, and I think this is something that YoloBox should add. So, you know, hey, you gotta put this one in. Pretty cool feature. But this is the ability to capture a still to immediately use in a production. The ATEMs have this, YoloBox does not. What this means is there is a button in the software to capture a still frame of whatever's happening on screen. So basically, it creates a PNG of the current program, and it loads that immediately into the media pool, which can be any number of things. If you're doing a title slide layout, which you know, I guess if you're doing title layouts on the YoloBox, then you don't need this function because you can see where you're laying the title out already. But on the ATEM, if you're doing a title, you need to have, you're doing that in external software, you need to know where to position it. And so you can take, let's say this is my frame and I'm doing a title for this. I can hit save frame and it'll save that. And then I can pull it off the ATEM, load it up into Photoshop or whatever, and decide a title around it. But it could also be used for things like, oh my gosh, there's something going, you know, some things falling apart. I need to kind of freeze the show for a moment. I don't want to fade to black. I don't want to, I don't know, I don't want to turn everything off. So I just need to load a graphic. I don't have a please stand by graphic, so I can take anything that's on screen, load it as a frame, and move it up there. So it's just one of those features that's kind of neat that's in there. Downstream key. So keying, I'm not going to spend time going into the difference between upstream and downstream keys, but at their core, they are things that lay on top of your video. That's all you really need to know for this. So the YoloBox has downstream keys, as does the ATEM Mini. So no major difference in there. You've got them on both. The upstream keys with a Luma pattern and DVE key, you do not have on the YoloBox. You do have on the ATEM Mini. Now that is what would allow this, although I messed something up and so its positioning is wrong, so that's why I'm not using it. But this is a DVE key where I have the video of me, so there's my normal video, and then I've keyed out I've keyed out a piece of that into a circle to overlay on the video. So that is what a DVE key will do. Luma key is actually how I'm running these. So this is a video, this is coming off of another computer, loaded up as black. So let's see here, yep, there we go. That's how it's loaded up on the computer. And then back in here, because of the Luma key, I'm Luma keying out the black, and that's giving this as a result. So that's something that you have on the ATEM. You don't have that on the YoloBox. And of course, you can use this for any number of things. You do, however, have chroma keying on all devices. Well, actually, not on the original YoloBox. You have it on the YoloBox Pro and then on both of the ATEMs. So that chroma keying is your green screen, blue screen effect. So that's what that is. That's chroma, meaning color. So you can key out the chroma. I suppose you could key out, you could use a chroma key on the ATEM to key out black, but it's a different approach. Luma key versus a chroma key is a different thing. Anyway. Picture-in-picture. So yes, all devices have a picture-in-picture functionality. You do have more control on the ATEM as far as size, positioning, and so on. But straight up, all devices have the ability to do a picture-in-picture. The split screen, side-by-side split screen type of view, you have that on both of the YoloBoxes. You have that on the ATEM Mini Extreme ISO because of something called SuperSource. You don't, however, have it on the base level ATEM. Without getting into the extremes, you do not have SuperSource, which means you cannot generate a true split screen side-by-side. You can fake it by taking the picture-in-picture and making the top layer, the picture-in-picture layer, making that 100% size, cropping it to the half and positioning it to one side. So then, like if I was gonna do that right now with an interview, I would stand over here and do a picture-in-picture over here that just takes up the other half of the screen. But this is not a true split screen, meaning I can take two video sources, scale them however I want to, and position them wherever I want. To do that, you have to have SuperSource. SuperSource is only in the ATEM Mini Extreme and Extreme ISO models, whereas on the YoloBox, that exists on both. So right there, if your thing is to do two-up interviews side by side and you want control over positioning where you position the people on screen, the YoloBox is going to be a cheaper option because you can do that on the base metal YoloBox, whereas you have to get into the, what I think is an $1,100 ATEM Mini, or is it $1,000, whatever it is, the ATEM Mini Extreme to do that. Good to know. SuperSource. So as I was just explaining, sort of, SuperSource does not exist on the YoloBox and YoloBox Pro or the ATEM Mini ISO. You only get to SuperSource on the ATEM Mini Extreme. And just to drive that point home, it's not just about split screen picture-in-picture. SuperSource allows you to take up to 4 inputs simultaneously, position them, scale them, crop them anywhere on screen. It is total flexibility. And you can, on these ATEM Mini Extremes, in fact, combine that with 4 upstream keys and get up to 8 different things on screen at once. It's pretty impressive, but there you go. Okay, variety of transition styles. So yes, all of them have variety of transitions. So that's your fades, dip to blacks, wipes, and so on. You can change the transition rate. So if you want a 1-second transition or half a second or whatever, you can do that on all the devices except for the base level YoloBox. There it's a fixed duration. I don't remember how long it is, but it's fixed. You can't change it. Custom transition control. You really don't have custom control on the YoloBoxes, but you do on the ATEMs. And that comes down to things like if you're doing a dip to black or it's dip to color, what color are you dipping to? If you're going to do a wipe, is it a not only the speed of the wipe, but is it a soft edge wipe? Is it a horizontal wipe or an angled wipe? And you have total control over that on the ATEM. You don't on the YoloBox. So if you're big in transitions, you want to do all kinds of fancy wacky transitions, then the ATEM is way more powerful than the YoloBox is for that. But that is the kind of thing that could be added on the YoloBox because it's it's all software. All that said, though, I'm not a big fan of transitions. You'll see in here I'm not using them almost anywhere. It's pretty much all hard cuts. I think that transitions can easily be overused and become distracting, so I'm not really going to knock YoloBox for not having that because you probably shouldn't be using them anyway, at least not to any extreme level. Okay. Still store / media pool. So yes, they all do. So this is the ability to store graphics inside of the hardware to play. Whereas remember the YoloBox, you can do videos as well. The ATEM, you can just do still graphics, but that's what this is, specifically still store. It's called the media pool. The ATEM has 20 maximum slots. The YOLO doesn't have a hard max, so it's, I don't know, I'm not quite sure what the criteria is, but there is no hard maximum. You basically just load them up until it breaks. The graphics on the ATEM, you only get still graphics, but on the YoloBox, you can do videos and PDFs, which we talked about earlier. So there's a huge difference on there. I guess the limit on the YoloBox is just how much it can store. Load media from the SD card, we already talked about this, so you do have that ability on the YoloBox, you do not on the ATEM. So just to kind of reiterate that point, if you have graphics, titles, whatever, that you want to load onto the ATEM, you have to have a computer to load those on. No two ways about it, you have to have a computer to load that in. Whereas on the YoloBox, all you need is those graphics on an SD card, pop in that SD card, browse them, and load them on, copy them over to the YoloBox. So big difference there, big difference. Load media from any computer on the network. So you cannot do this on the YoloBox, you can do this on the ATEM. What this means is, so I've got my ATEM here, I got my computer here. They could be connected over USB, and that's fine, and then I could load graphics that way. But they can also be connected over the network, which is clearly the preferred way to work because you have a lot more flexibility. What this means by the any computer is I can have multiple computers talking to the ATEM at once. And so if I'm doing a big show, I could have someone controlling audio on the ATEM and they're just loading up the audio board, which yeah, you've seen the audio board before. So I can load up the full audio interface of the ATEM software and control that from one computer. Meanwhile, somebody else, the graphics guy, is loading up all the graphics onto the ATEM, making graphics in Photoshop and loading them on from the separate computer. So you can have multiple computers accessing the same hardware. The YoloBox doesn't have anything like that because you can't access it over a computer at all. So obviously then you can't access it over multiple computers. So it's a pretty cool thing for a larger production. And then load media directly from Photoshop. So this goes along with the computer thing, but it's a specific line item in here because it is a specific feature in the ATEM. When you install the ATEM software, if you have Photoshop installed, it loads a plugin into Photoshop, which allows you to load graphics from Photoshop, publish them directly to the ATEM. So you don't have to save the graphic and then go into the ATEM software and drag it in or copy it in. You can literally publish it directly to the ATEM itself, and then you can even load it to air. So if you are, again, doing graphics for a live event and you're the guy doing the graphics and you're doing them live, you can publish from Photoshop directly to air using the ATEM and the Photoshop plugin, which is really, really neat. Not gonna apply to anyone doing a solo production like I'm doing here, but if you are doing a big live production, then that's something that you have the ability to do, which is really, really cool. Okay, that's everything there under the media and effects. Man, well, this is a huge thing, isn't it? There's a lot to cover here. Let me take a quick look in the chat while I take a little drink of water and see if we're missing anything. Let's go ahead and bring up the chat again here. Cliff from Barbados, browsing YouTube, saw that I'm live. Greetings from Barbados. Well, hello in Barbados. It's wonderful for you to be here. YoloBox Pro should have a bit of audio mixing now, not on YoloBox yet. Oh, okay. So that's good. I guess they've been slowly adding little pieces into there, so that's cool. Can you play video from the SD card and record at the same time on YOLO? Well, you don't play the video from the SD card. You load it from the SD card into the YoloBox's memory. At least I'm pretty sure that's right. Pretty sure that's right. Frank, you can comment on that. Oh, Curtis, you're here as well. What's it going, buddy? Let's see. Ooh, a lot of chats coming through. Let me scroll through here. They just popped off screen. Let's see here. There needs to be a YoloBox Extreme with a 15-inch screen and 8 inputs. Ooh, that could be kind of cool. That could be kind of cool. Oh, Fang says, we have a big update coming soon for auto-switching, web URL overlay, more overlays templates. That's cool. Great. So, again, always new stuff coming, which is really, really cool. Yeah, Aaron's not wrong here. Not having an FTB, a fade to black button, means you can't accidentally push the fade to black button. Totally fair, man. I mean, we've done that. So here, if I go here to this view and I hit fade to black, you see what top right, the program out went to black. Yeah, that's a mistake waiting to happen, and I've done it. I have made that mistake in a live event. Oops. You can't disable it. So yeah, there you go. There you go. Fang says, oh, is it a transition? No, so I just showed you a fade to black. There you go. It's, yeah, and Curtis is pointing out, it's really for emergencies. You need to take the show off quickly. So that's what it really is about. Okay, let's see here. Anything else I want to do? Fang says, oh, charts organized. Why, thank you, Fang. Really informative, great logic. Thanks for that. You're very welcome. You should have your team members watch this, as well as everybody else in the world should watch this video. All right, let's see here. And Fang saying, maybe we'll add it in the next update. There you go, look at that. Amore would like to have a GIMP plugin. I wouldn't expect that to come out of Blackmagic, but maybe somebody else could write one. I mean, that's worth pointing out, actually. I didn't even, well, actually, I do talk about this a little bit later, but the ATEM, because it's accessible over the network, there is an API for it, and so you can write third-party software. In fact, there's a lot of third-party software out there to control the ATEM, so I don't see any reason that somebody could not write a GIMP plugin to publish from GIMP to the ATEM directly. I'm sure that is possible. There you go. Okay, let's see here. We're good. All right, let's take this chat off and move on. So we are getting into audio next. Oops, audio, open that tab. There we go. Okay, audio, programmable audio delay. The YoloBox does not have this, the ATEM does. Why is this important? If you're bringing your audio in separately from the video, so you're using the mic or the line level inputs on either device, that audio is coming in real time, or at least extremely close to it if you're using digital mics. HDMI video in, however, will have a delay. Some cameras have more delay than others, but that delay needs to be compensated for. The easiest solution to this is to run your audio through the camera directly, and then everything's in sync. You don't have to worry about it. However, if you're bringing audio in off of a board because you're doing, I don't know, like let's say you're doing a live streaming a play, and so you need to pull the audio off of the soundboard, you can program that delay, that necessary delay in the ATEM. You can't do that on the YoloBox. Now, to be fair, if you're pulling audio off of a big mixing board, they should have the ability to program the delay on their end. But if you're just using a simple mic setup and for whatever reason you're bringing your mic or you have to bring your mic into the line input, then having that programmable delay is really, really important. So that is something that you have on the ATEM, you don't have on the YoloBox. But again, that's something that could easily be added, and given that they're doing a whole big audio reworking here, I would imagine that's something that's coming. Right? Right, guys? Yeah, totally coming. Okay. Multi-input audio. So this is the thing I was talking about earlier, where you can bring in audio from any of the sources on the ATEM, but you cannot do that currently on the YoloBox, meaning that I can bring in, like I said, audio from inputs 2, 5, and 3 along with the line in, mix them however I want to. Can't do that on the YOLO yet. I know they're working on a lot of stuff for that, so that will probably come, but currently we're talking about what's here today. There you go. Advanced equalizer and advanced audio processing. So again, no on the YoloBox, yes on the ATEMs. The ATEMs have a lot of audio processing. If you've ever used DaVinci Resolve, there's what's called the Fairlight page. That's where all the audio processing happens. A massive amount of that audio processing is built into this hardware. So noise gates, compression, EQ, all that stuff is built in, and you can do all of that in the hardware, which is extremely powerful. And that is something that is on the ATEMs, not on the YoloBox. Again, they're working on some enhanced stuff, but we got to talk about what's here today. All right. Where am I? Back to here. In individual input audio levels control. So you do have that on the YoloBox. You can change the levels of of what's coming in, but you just can't mix multiples at once. And of course, you have that on the ATEM as well. All righty. Recording the program. So all devices can record the program being the show. So the YoloBox will record it to its built-in SD card. And I see Frank has said that you can load and record local SD card video at the same time. So meaning that it can be recording and you can copy off or load off videos from it simultaneously. So that's great. So all devices will record the program. The YoloBox does it to the SD card. The ATEM Mini requires an external USB drive, but there you go, that's how that works. Then there's recording the ISOs. This is a huge feature. The YoloBox does not do this, whereas the ATEM does. The ISO models, specifically the ISO models, but again, this is what we are comparing to because price-wise, that's where the fair comparison is. So what the ISO feature means is that when you hit record, you have the ability to record not just the program, so that's, this part right here, but also the isolated streams or the ISO streams of all inputs. So all 8 inputs on the ATEM plus the separate audio inputs can get recorded into separate files that can be re-edited, remixed later. And in fact, on the ATEM, not only do you have the ability to record it, but you also get the Resolve project file. So if you are doing a live show and you're switching camera angles and you're going to republish that later, you're going to take the show, re-edit, and republish it later, all the camera angle switches that you did live are recorded into a DaVinci Resolve file that you can load into Resolve and then make some tweaks. Oh, I went to camera B at the wrong timing. I loaded the wrong camera. Whatever. You can readjust everything, or you can start from scratch, throw it all away, and just re-edit from scratch. But that is possible on the ATEM Mini Extreme ISOs. Clearly not something that happens on the YoloBox since there is no ISO recording. And in case you've never heard of this feature before and you're thinking, that's really cool, but I use Premiere or I use Final Cut, you can take the Resolve project file, open it in the free version of Resolve, and then export out an XML or an FCP XML to use in other NLEs. So you have that functionality there. And then this is another really, really cool feature. Record in camera ISOs to BRAW and automatically match them up. So clearly this doesn't exist for the YoloBox. This is a really, really huge feature on the ATEM. It does require the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, but if you are doing a live setup, if you build a live setup where you have multiple Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, the 4K or the 6K, not only can you get your 1080p ISOs recorded to a disk, but you can automatically trigger recording to BRAW, so that's the Blackmagic RAW, in the cameras in 4K or 6K, And then when you bring the project file into Resolve, you bring in those raw files as well. They automatically find each other and match up. And then you can re-edit or rebroadcast your, or re-upload your show in 4K or even 6K if you wanted to. 6K usually means you're going to punch into a 4K shot, but you have that functionality, which is incredibly cool. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't go around to all of your cameras and just hit record on each camera, assuming you have a camera that can record internally and output clean HDMI at the same time. Not all cameras do, but most of the Lumix ones do. That's why you should use Lumix. You do have that ability. You can push those buttons on each camera, but you're not going to get any of the auto matching or anything like that. So you're just manually doing it, but that's how that works. So that's a really, really cool feature on the ATEMs, assuming that you're using the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. Moving on to streaming. So stream to multiple destinations at once without additional services. The YoloBox can do this, the ATEM cannot. So the YoloBox has a built-in functionality where while you can stream to YouTube or Facebook or Twitch or whatever directly, you can stream to a service that YoloBox provides for free, and then they will restream it out to your multiple destinations. You can do this with the ATEM by using a service like Restream.io, but you have to pay for that separately. You have to buy or license whatever Restream to do that. So you have that functionality built into the YoloBox, which is pretty darn cool to be able to, for them to provide that service for free. Essentially, it comes with your YoloBox. That's nice. So that is a really, really cool functionality that you have. Schedule a live event without a computer. You can do this on the YoloBoxes. You can't on the ATEMs. And what I mean by this is, let's go back to the YoloBox. Let me back out of here. I can create a live stream. So I click on the plus and I go create a live stream, and this will allow me to title and schedule my live stream show and have that get loaded onto my YouTube channel. This is assuming you've already logged into your YouTube channel, of course. That means that I don't have to plan ahead for a show. I can literally build the show right here on the ATEM and go live with it. Whereas on the ATEM, on the YoloBox and go live with it. Whereas on the ATEM, you can't. You have to have a pre-existing live show. So you have to go into the YouTube studio, create a new live show, and then get the key for that and drop it into the ATEM to stream to it. So big difference there. If you are on the go kind of creating things, then using the YoloBox is really a nice advantage for that. So that's a pretty cool feature. I pointed out on here that you can do what's called Live Now with the ATEM. And this is a function on YouTube where you set up it's called Live Now. It's basically kind of an open live show that you can just start going live at any time. You don't have to title or pre-build or schedule or anything. You just go live to it. So you could technically set up your ATEM to stream to that destination, and then when you just hit go live and you're live, but you can't make a title, you can't do a schedule, you can't load a thumbnail, any of that stuff. It's just kind of a straight to live, straight to air. Stream to custom RTMP or RMTP. Wow, I clearly got those transposed in RTMP. Too much RTMP, so this should be RTS. Is that right? I don't even know anymore. You know what? Whatever. Custom, you can do custom ones on the YoloBox. You can't on the ATEM. You would have to go in and modify the XML. So, oh, look, I even have a note there. I'd link to old video, which I didn't do. But I did a video quite a few years ago on modifying the XML, and it's not your standard exported XML, it's some other file in the computer, but modifying the ATEM so that it can stream to other destinations that it doesn't have included. If you're looking for that video, search on YouTube, search PhotoJoseph ATEM Restream.io. And the reason it's for Restream.io is because they actually sponsored that video, and I showed how to modify the ATEM so that you could stream to Restream and therefore stream out to multiple destinations. Since then, Blackmagic has built that functionality into the ATEM. They've built Restream as one of the dropdowns, so you don't have to customize it anymore. But if you want to do your own custom destination, that's how you do it. You got to go in there and mess with the code. It's not a big deal, but it has to be done, whereas on the YoloBox, it just is there. You just punch it in and off you go. It actually has a really cool function of how that whole setup works. It's pretty slick, but anyway. Let's see here, Facebook and YouTube comments and monitor overlay. So this is something that the YoloBox has, the ATEM does not. What this means is that you can not only see your YouTube comments on the display here, but actually incorporate them into the show, which is a really nice setup on the YoloBox. ATEM doesn't do that at all. The way that I'm doing the comments on here is a completely separate thing. Massive other hardware involved in getting this all together, but there you go. So that's something that you can do built in on the YoloBox, which is pretty neat. I see a bunch of other questions coming up, so I'm going to come back to I'll come to those in a moment. Let me get through this category here. So we did that one. 480p, 720p, and 1080p streaming options. So you do on the YoloBox, you can go all the way down to 480p. You don't on the ATEM. You can do 1080. Can you do 720? Shoot, now I'm forgetting if you didn't put a note in here. I think on the ATEM you can only do 1080, whereas on the YoloBox you can go all the way down to 480. So if you really have a low bandwidth need, then you can do that on there. Various bitrate encoding choices. So yes, across the board, you can change the bitrate. It's a little bit different setup. There's a slider on the YoloBox. There's presets on the ATEM. The presets on the ATEM can be modified with the same process of how you modify the streaming destinations, but basically you have a series of presets. So you have a little bit more flexibility on the YoloBox than you do on the ATEM, but again, your needs should be covered with what's built in. There are other types of streaming though. The YoloBox Pro will do CBR, VBR, and CQ. So that's constant bit rate, variable bit rate, or constant quality streaming options, allowing you to choose through those. Whereas what you get on the ATEM is always a constant bit rate. Now, that said, it does actually do a variable bit rate. Even though you're setting, let's say you set a 10 megabit bit rate, it does actually change that. And you'll know that because if you load up a title slide and you hold that for a long time, and you look at it on YouTube in the YouTube Studio, it will say low bit rate because it's getting less data. So it is actually a variable bit rate, but you are still defining a target bit rate for it. You just have more control over that on the YoloBox than you do on the ATEM. Okay. All right, that's everything there. Let me take a quick look over at the comments and see if there's anything else that we want to address. Let's see here. What about connecting both to each other? So I'm assuming you're talking about connecting the ATEM and the YoloBox together. Totally can do that, which is actually kind of a cool solution. So you could use the ATEM as your switcher, do all your switching here, but then use the YoloBox to stream, to do your graphics, do your scoreboards, your countdowns, all those other things. You totally can do that. You're adding into your cost a fair amount, but it absolutely technically can be done. So that's pretty neat. People talking about Scrippy, Scrappy. I don't know what Scrippy and Scrappy is, but cool. Let's see here. Oh, look, and there's somebody commenting that you can indeed do that. Let's see here. Ooh, so web overlay. So Feng's saying that web overlay is coming, so that's awesome. I guess that, web URL overlay, so you can load up a website and put that on. Okay, cool, nice, neat, love it. Auto switching is awesome too, like the Mevo, perfect for one-man show. Yeah, neither of these, well, okay. So auto switching on the Mevos, if you're using the Mevo Start multicam thing, you can have it automatically switch cameras, and you can even have it prioritize specific cameras. So let's say you're doing a theater presentation, stage presentation, but you're streaming it live. You've got a camera on you, and you've got a wide shot of the audience, just to say two. You can set up auto switching so it goes back and forth, but you can tell it to prioritize the camera of you. So it spends more time on you than it does on the other cameras. Pretty darn cool functionality. The YoloBox doesn't do anything like that. The ATEM doesn't technically do that, but you can record a macro, create a macro that automatically switches camera angles every X seconds. You can just set it however you want. And you can randomize it, and those some big air quotes, you randomize it by saying in your macro, switch to camera 1, you'll start with camera 1, and then 10 seconds later go to camera 3, and then 5 seconds later go to camera 2, and then 8 seconds later go to camera 4. And you could write that as long as you wanted, bouncing around as much as you wanted, making it as random as you wanted, and then loop that macro so it is constantly changing camera angles. In fact, I think that was the very first ATEM mini tip that I ever did, I think was on how to do that. But it's not truly random. You do have to create the ability for the macro for it to do it and then loop it, but it can be done. Whereas on the YoloBox, that's not a functionality. But there you go. Okay. ISO recording at this price point was a game changer. Yeah, totally agreed. Totally agreed. Amar is saying that the ATEM uses hardware H.264 encoding accelerators in the FPGAs that handles the inputs. Do you know why the hardware in the YoloBox looks like? Oh, okay, we're talking about the different bit rates, variable bit rate stuff. Oh, here's an actual question for me. So neither actually send out multiple streams from the device. It's a separate service from the company. Correct. So keep in mind that if you're trying to send multiple streams from your device, then that means you need twice the bandwidth in your studio, home, wherever you're streaming from. So if you have that, then you could buy things like the ATEM web presenters. You could get a couple of those. You could loop the signal through each one and have one that's streaming to Facebook, one to YouTube, if you've got the bandwidth for that. But built-in, no, it doesn't do it built-in. All right, let's see here. Amre says the the ATEM will stream at the resolution that is set for the complete chain processing. If you set 720, that's what's going out. So yes, and now that you're saying that, and because I couldn't remember the 720, I'm going to do a quick little check in here. So let me, let's see, we'll go to this. I'm going to go and load up the other ATEM. Let's get rid of the chat on there. And let's see, let me switch over to the extreme ISO that's sitting on my desk. And what are my resolution options? Yeah, they're all 1080p. That's what I thought. So you don't have a 720 option on here. You can't set the ATEM to do 720, which means that you can't stream 720. So it streams whatever it's set to there. Okay. All right. Robert's saying both ways work great. Oh, okay, we're talking about that, switching. And then Amar's saying, hadn't realized that YOLO did that through a service restream is bad enough, point of failure, adding a free service to that. So again, I should get this thing off of the screen so you can see the whole thing. It seems less reliable. I haven't stress tested the YoloBox service that they're offering, so I can't comment on that. I'm sure Fang would be happy to comment on the reliability of that, the uptime of that. I don't know, but I've used Restream.io in the past, and it's great. It's a great service, but you have to pay for it. So that works really well. You can also build your own custom thing in Amazon Cloud if you really wanted to. But yeah, there's a lot of different options in there. Everyday Text says, have you used Mix Effect? I think it does the automatic switching feature of the ATEM. Oh, cool. I have used it a little bit. I don't use it in my production. I've included it in some videos. It's a great functionality. So Mix Effect is third-party software that runs on your iPad that allows you to control the ATEM. If it has an automatic switching, that's cool. I didn't know that, so awesome. Good for them. Okay, let's move on to the next section, which is device control. We've talked about this part a little bit because it came up earlier. Control from a computer anywhere on the network, so you cannot do that with the YoloBox as you can with the ATEM. This is a big deal, right? The ability to take control of your hardware remotely is kind of important. Again, it depends on the type of show you're doing, right? The YoloBox is designed as this all-in-one portable solution. The ATEM is designed as a requires other pieces and sits on your desk solution. So they're very, very different. But the fact that you can control the ATEM from external hardware and software obviously is a big deal. That allows me to do everything that I'm doing today. In this live show, it is all being controlled, you might have noticed, through a Stream Deck sitting here on my desk, which is running, which is triggering companion buttons, which are controlling all the other things that are happening around us. So there is a massive amount of power in that. That brings us to the BitFocus Companion / Stream Deck control. You can't do this with the YoloBox. You can do this with the ATEMs. Now, that's not to say that YoloLive couldn't create that capability. Again, it's an Android box. It is on your network, right? It's plugged into my Ethernet cable here. It's on the network. So theoretically, they could make it so that it can be controlled externally, but it doesn't work that way today. That ability to control things through third-party software is immeasurably awesome and powerful. And in case you're thinking, well, but the ATEM has macros, why don't you just use that? I used to do everything with macros, and then one day I graduated to using Companion. Aaron, that was his fault. He finally pushed me into it, and I was like, oh my God, what took me so long to get here? Companion allows you to tie multiple things together. So a macro can only trigger one ATEM, that ATEM that it's on, whereas Companion can trigger multiple ATEMs. So I've got Companion plugged into my audio mixer from Behringer, multiple ATEMs at once, into HyperDeck recorders, into the Perl encoder. There's all this stuff that it does. I can control all of it from one place. So it's pretty awesome to be able to do. iOS apps control. Again, no iOS app control on the YoloBox. Yes on the ATEM, and that's third-party stuff. So like the like Mix Effect that was mentioned earlier, this is third-party software that runs on an iOS app or on an iPad or an iPhone that can control the ATEM. Pretty powerful stuff. Pretty cool. Let's see here. Quick access. Okay, this is important. Quickly access multiple controls like audio levels, transition style, picture-in-picture settings, and more from the device, hardware buttons, without having to dig through the menus. So this is, I mean, this could be kind of, depending on how you read the question, could be a little bit misleading. But what I'm talking about here is this. All of these buttons on here. I have immediate access to not just my camera angles. I have control over the audio up here. I have, this is all about audio here. I have control over cameras, things like camera gain, camera focus. I can control cameras on here. All of my upstream, downstream keys can be controlled in here. All of this is on buttons that are directly on here. Now, I've just spent a bunch of time talking about how you can control this all through software. This could live under my desk, never touch it. In fact, I have one mounted under this desk here that I never touch. It's all controlled through software. The one in my rack is all controlled through software, but you do have the ability to do that. Now, that said, you also control the YoloBox by touching the interface here. But what I'm really talking about here is you have instant access to, I don't even know how many buttons are on this thing, I don't want to count, but a lot of things. Whereas in here, you do have to navigate through the menu system to do different things. So I have to go through all the software in here. And if I want to change something, I'm going to have to dig deep multiple levels into this to get to it. Whereas on here, I just have one touch access. So that's really what I'm talking about there. Again, it's, a bit of a misnomer because you do have control on here, but you have quicker access to things on the ATEM because there's so many buttons. On the same token, it's very easy to get confused on the ATEM. There's so many buttons. You're like, I have no idea where that button is. So there's that as well. And then macros. So I touched on this a little bit earlier. There's no macro functionality on the YoloBox, but that is a core element of the ATEM lineup. This goes across all the ATEMs. The ability to automate certain things, load this camera angle, load this into preview, set up a dissolve that's a 3-second dissolve or a wipe or whatever, load that in, bring up a lower third graphic. All of that can be controlled via a single touch with a macro. That's something you could do on the ATEM. You can't do that on the YoloBox. And macros are immensely powerful. That's how I do a huge amount of what I do here. When you combine macros with the companion layer, then you've just got complete and total control. It's really, really awesome. That's device control. Last one is external hardware. What do I even have here? Oh, controlling external hardware for recording and playback, i.e. a hyperdeck. So specifically about the hyperdeck, you can't do this with the YoloBox, you can with the ATEM. So a hyperdeck is a recorder / player, think of it like a VTR, that is completely controllable from the ATEM itself. So I can do things like play a video file that's loaded on that from the ATEM. I can record the ATEM's output to that. I don't have a camera pointing at it now, but I actually use a bank of 6 hyperdecks where I can record all the ISOs in 4K going into those hyperdecks. And I can control those from the ATEM. None of that exists on the YoloBox at all. So it's just a whole other layer of hardware support. Again, it really is designed for Blackmagic hardware. Blackmagic obviously makes all this stuff, the ATEM and the hyperdecks and so on. You have a lot of control over external pieces. You don't have that on the YoloBox. And this is the other cool one, the camera control. So this does require Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, but you have control over the exposure, the color balancing, focus, the power zoom, if you have a power zoom lens on there, and so on, all from either the hardware on here or the software on the ATEM software running on your computer. This is pretty cool stuff, the ability to control your cameras that way. That doesn't exist on the YoloBox at all. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is everything in there. That is the full comparison. Oh boy, that was a lot. That took a while to get through. So with that done, let's see if there's any other chat things I want to address. And otherwise, I'm gonna go have lunch. I'm so hungry right now. All right, let's see here. What have we got going on here? Okay, so Fang's talking about reliability of his restream service. It should be reliable enough. We use Amazon's cloud for restreaming. We also have the direct mode when you don't go through the server, of course. In that case, no restreaming, but 100% reliable. Well, as reliable as the destination is, right? And all the hops in between. But Frank's point here is that the restream service that they're doing is based on Amazon servers. So it's as reliable as Amazon can be. So that's really cool. Remote control for YoloBox is one of my most important feature requests. Yeah, I'll second that one, Aaron. I think that this is something that we should definitely have. Fang, I know we've talked about it before, but this would be awesome to be able to get control of the YoloBox remotely. That would be incredibly powerful. And honestly, it would put it, I might end up finding a well, no, because I'm doing everything 4K now. So it's not going to fit into this studio setup, but it's certainly awesome to have. I don't know that Aaron wants it, so you should definitely get that. Let's see. Ooh, that's a good idea. How about the ability to plug a Stream Deck directly into one of the YoloBox's USB ports? That could be cool. That could be cool. And then they could write a plugin for the Stream Deck. So bypassing Companion, have a plugin for the Stream Deck to control the YoloBox, plugging the Stream Deck in directly. Ooh, I like that idea. Yeah, write that one down, Frank. That's a good one. I like that. Okay, let's see here. Aaron's saying would rather see OSC support all the features they wouldn't have to support off hardware one time. Sure, but I mean, still would be pretty cool, right? It would be pretty cool. The split screen feature in the YoloBox is so much more user-friendly. And this isn't something I talked about, but I suppose it's worth mentioning. The ability to control the YoloBox via this screen touch interface here, dragging windows around, changing the placement of things on this touch interface, is a lot easier than doing it on the ATEM. You get used to how things work on the ATEM, but it is not a drag and drop type experience. So there are certain things about using the YoloBox that are certainly easier than using the ATEM. I would say you've got simplicity is the advantage on the YoloBox, power and flexibility is the advantage on the ATEM when it comes to that sort of thing. So that's how I would put that. Okay. Oh, Frank's saying OSC support took longer than we thought. We have to give away for other features first. All right. Well, so they're looking at it. There we go. Let's see here. Stream Deck. More people talking about Stream Deck. That would be really cool. I like the idea. Feng says may happen in 1 year, but not so soon. Okay, fair enough. Camera control works with any of the Blackmagic cameras. True that. So it's the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera control is over HDMI, which is a two-way communication path. The older, I shouldn't even say older because they are still current, but the ATEM studio cameras that are SDI based, the studio cameras specifically, allow camera control over SDI, and it is a dual, you have to have two SDI cables running because SDI is a one-way directional data stream. So you have to have two cables running. You can plug those cameras into the ATEM Mini, which is HDMI, using the Blackmagic SDI to HDMI converters, the dual, what is it called? The dual, I forget now the name of it, but there's one that you can use that way, which is really pretty cool. So if you've got these older or these more higher end cameras for broadcast, you can still do that camera control in here. But the ATEM Mini lineup is really designed to go along with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras. They're kind of designed to work together like that. So just something out there to know. Okay, anything else? One Touch Go Live is a huge feature of the ATEM, makes it so much easier to do. So One Touch to go live, assuming you've already set everything up in advance, right? You still need to go into the software and configure everything, and then it's One Touch to go live, which is great. I mean, same as basically on the YOLO, right? You have to set everything up in advance, then when you're ready to go live, you touch go live. So yeah, I mean, argument can be made either way, but there we go. Okay. Whew, that was a big one. Folks, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned a thing or two. What was the title of the show? Which one is better? As I said in the pre-show, which one is better for you? There is no, oh, this one's better than that one. It's better for certain use cases. It's better for certain users, one over the other. That is a decision that you need to make for your particular use case. And that's why I did this show, because I wanted to go through every single feature, and I hope I got them all. I might have missed something, but I hope I got them all. And by all means, if I did miss anything, drop it into the comments below afterwards, after the show, so everybody can see it. But I think we got all the stuff covered in here. And it really does, again, come down to which one is better for you. So that's what this is really truly about. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope that you found this educational. I hope that you have learned something, and hopefully this brought you closer to being able to make a solid decision on which one you should buy. With all that said, I'm out of here. It's lunchtime. I'm starving. It's time to wrap this thing up. So thank you again for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.